Sonia Titizian.
And I'm Rubina Margosian, and this is The Week in Review.
Every week we bring you the stories shaping Armenia and the region.
From politics and policy to social issues and conflict, we break down the news and what it means for you.
This week in the news, Constitutional Court hears challenges to the results of the June 7 parliamentary election. Russia intensifies economic pressure as Armenia pushes to diversify exports. And government moves closer to nationalizing Electric Networks of Armenia. These stories and more in our weekly roundup of the news.
Well, Armenia's Constitutional Court started hearing challenges to the results of Armenia's June 7 parliamentary elections today. The court has consolidated appeals filed by 7 political parties. These include Strong Armenia, Armenia Alliance, Prosperous Armenia, Wings of Unity, Democracy Law, Discipline Party, Rally for the Republic Party, and the New Force Party. These parties are contesting the Central Electoral Commission's certification of the results of the election. The Constitutional Court can uphold the results, annul the election, revise the distribution of parliamentary seats, or order a second round of voting. 2 Constitutional Court judges, Artak Zeynalian and Vladimir Vartanian, have recused themselves from the case over concerns about their impartiality. Well, Vladimir Gasparian was a member of the Civil Contract Party for years, and he was in parliament before being appointed a judge at the Constitutional Court, and Artak Zeynalian is from the Republic Party, which has been an alliance member with Pashinyan Civil Contract and was at one point briefly Minister of Justice. Yes. Well, the ruling Civil Contract Party is participating in the proceedings as a third party. The Central Electoral Commission is the respondent. The Prosecutor General's Office, the Interior Ministry, and the Anti-Corruption Committee have also been joined to the case. The Constitutional Court has until July 4 to deliver the verdict. And just a reminder, according to the official results, Civil Contract won 64 seats in the new parliament. The Strong Armenia Alliance secured 29 seats, and the Hayastan Alliance won 12 seats. Prosperous Armenia did not make it to parliament, just pending several votes, basically, and that's also kind of being contested now. Strong Armenia and Armenia Alliance have called separate rallies outside the Constitutional Court.
In other news, Armenia's ruling Civil Contract Party has nominated Ruben Rubinian as its candidate for Speaker of the National Assembly. Rubinian, who currently serves as Deputy Speaker and as Armenia's Special Envoy for the normalization process with Turkey, was selected in a secret ballot at a meeting of the party's governing board. He will replace Alen Simonian. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan told reporters that there will not be any major changes to the cabinet, saying the deputy prime ministers and ministers will remain in their posts. He also said he has issued a call for graduates of the world's top 200 universities to join the Armenian government. According to Pashinyan, the government now has the resources to pay public servants based on their merit.
Yeah, and this announcement calling the graduates of top 10 universities was
200 universities.
200, yeah, was made just days after the election.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, opposition figure Avedik Chalabian has been placed in pre-trial detention for 2 months on charges of attempting to obstruct the free exercise of voting rights during the June 7 elections. Investigators allege that in May, Chalabian met with officials in a foreign country and sought their assistance in helping the Strong Armenia Alliance win the election. The alleged scheme involved pressuring Armenian citizens working in that country to travel to Armenia and vote for the alliance now. The Prosecutor General's Office or the Investigative Committee never says which country it is.
But we all know what
we
they're
all know
talking
it's
about.
Russia,
Right.
because we also heard this recording. It was released during the pre-election campaign period. So it's in regards to Russia. Well, it's been confirmed that it's Chalabian's voice that appears in the audio recording. Chalabian denies the allegations. His lawyer described the detention order as unlawful and said it will be appealed. Chalabian initially teamed up with Wings of Unity with
Arman
Tatoyan. That was very short-lived. And then he joined the Strong Armenia Alliance.
Strong Armenia. I'm getting confused between the Armenias. Well, opposition member of parliament Ishkhan Sagatelian of the Armenia Alliance and a member of the ARF, Dashnak Sutyun, is also facing criminal charges. The investigative committee has opened 2 criminal criminal cases against Sagatelian and his wife, alleging they violated a court order freezing certain assets and failed to comply with mandatory asset declaration requirements. And just again, every member of parliament is required to declare all of their assets, and clearly they have not complied with that, according to investigators, who say that the couple failed to properly declare assets after an anti-corruption court ordered them frozen and prohibited any transactions involving them. Sagatelian has not yet publicly responded to the charges.
And Armenia's Prosecutor General's office has asked the Central Electoral Commission for permission to bring charges against businessman and Prosperous Armenia party leader Gagik Tsarukyan. Well, just a reminder, he's a candidate in the elections, and then the Constitutional Court has not issued a final ruling yet. He's still considered a candidate.
And as such has immunity, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've seen this happen with Robert Kocharian as well, and another member of Strong Armenia Party earlier.
Last week we reported on.
The spokesperson for the Central Electoral Commission said the request will be considered after the Constitutional Court completes its review of the appeals, because they combined of the appeal.
In the meantime, the government has revoked the operating license of the Shangri-La Casino owned by Gagik Tsarukyan. The economy minister said the move followed an inspection that found the casino's operator had submitted false financial reports for March 2026. According to the ministry, the figures did not match data recorded by the casino's gaming machines. The revocation is the latest in a series of measures targeting Tsarukyan's business interests. Authorities are also seeking to nationalize his Ararat cement factory, while last week Yerevan City Hall voted to terminate the lease for the multi-wellness sports complex in Yerevan's the Circular Park, as it's called.
Next to Vernissage.
Next to Vernissage. Everyone has seen it, right?
Well, and as Russia trade restrictions on Armenian products continue, and yes, new ones are, we'll talk about the new ones later in the podcast. Armenia's government and the European Union are stepping up efforts to help local producers access EU markets. This week, Economy Minister Gevorg Papoyan met with Armenian exporters to discuss state support programs and export diversification. He also met with EU and member state diplomats in Yerevan, emphasizing that many Armenian companies are ready to establish long-term partnerships with the European buyers. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is expected to visit Yerevan in early July, accompanied by Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said expanding market access for Armenian agricultural products will be a key topic of the visit. Meanwhile, von der Leyen is expected to visit Baku before traveling to Armenia.
Russian officials continued pressing Armenia to choose between its membership in the Eurasian Economic Union and its bid to join the EU. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Armenia faces a pivotal decision, arguing that the EAEU, this is the Eurasian Economic Union membership, contributes to the country's annual economic growth and that the bloc offers greater benefits than EU integration. Separately, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova accused Armenia of using its relationship with Russia as a tactical tool to finance its shift toward the European Union. I'm not sure how it would do that, but this is what Zakharova said. Pashinyan, meanwhile, openly questioned the future of the Eurasian Economic Union, warning that the bloc loses its meaning if its principle of free movement of goods is not upheld. I mean, it's if you're blocking every Armenian product, how is Armenia even a member of this trade bloc? Speaking at a cabinet meeting and later at a press briefing, Pashinyan said Armenia remains a member of the EAEU and does not consider the current situation irreversible, but called on the bloc to provide a clear answer. He warned that if trade restrictions continue for several more months, it would indicate that the Eurasian Economic Union is no longer functioning as intended. Armenia's frozen membership in the Collective Security Treaty Organization also returned to the spotlight this week. Senior CSTO officials said Armenia's future participation will be discussed at the highest levels of the alliance, while Moscow is awaiting Yerevan's final decision. Zakharova also warned that Armenia could lose its voting rights and its ability to make nominations for quota-based positions within the organization.
Well, Armenia hasn't been participating willingly for some time. And also regarding EAEU situation, right? Russia saying, your standards are not up to par, and
they were a few months ago, but not
now. All of a sudden. However, interestingly, this round, Pashinyan also warned other member states, saying that the same tactics can be used against you. So I'm sure we'll talk about it next week and the week after and the week after. It's a repeating theme, but it's always in the news. So, and as promised in the podcast, about the new restrictions. Russia has suspended fish product imports from all Armenian suppliers. The Russian food safety watchdog announced this week that it has temporarily halted certification for 2 additional Armenian companies pending their resolution of previously identified violations. The agency had earlier requested Armenia to pause certification across its fish export sector following systemic regulatory breaches, exempting only those 2 firms that had participated in inspections directly. So now I have a lot of opinions about this. I don't know why Armenia should be exporting fish
Why are
to
we even breeding
Russia,
fish,
or
right?
why do it, and
Taking
at what
over the Ararat
expense?
Valley.
At what cost?
The cost of our water.
And the Ararat Valley,
Yeah.
and why should we be exporting fish? I don't understand. So this one I'm not so upset about.
Okay, don't be upset about this one, but yeah, I mean, anybody who's driven through the Ararat Valley will see the fish farms.
It's kind of like the way they've abused the water resources.
We've written about it. Yeah, we've talked about it. Well, from water to telecommunication, Armenian and Azerbaijani telecom companies have reached an agreement on internet transit. Telecom Armenia and Azer Telecom signed an agreement allowing Azerbaijan to route internet traffic between its mainland and its exclave Nakhichevan through Armenia's fiber optic network on a commercial basis. Physical connections will be established at the Gornitsor and Yeras border crossings pending approval from Armenia's National Security Service. Telecom Armenia said the agreement covers only the transit of internet traffic through its fiber optic infrastructure and does not give Azerbaijan access to Armenian internet data. Board Chair Alexander Yesayan described it as a bandwidth sharing arrangement rather than a data exchange, saying it represents both a commercial opportunity and a strategic gain for the company. The agreement has raised security concerns in Armenia. However, experts are saying that those concerns are largely overstated. They said the arrangement would not give Azerbaijan access to the content of internet communications, while Armenia's internet connectivity relies on multiple routes, making it unlikely that any disruption to a single link would have a significant impact. But I don't know, Rup, at my house and here at the office, we've been having internet lags.
Don't start conspiracy theories, Maria. The internet has been, and this is just an agreement now. It physically hasn't happened.
I'm just,
and also, I just want to remind everyone that during the 44-day war, there was a lot of numbers and networks were hacked. And do you guys remember that Azerbaijanis were sending Yandex deliveries and taxes to random people's homes?
I had forgotten about that.
Anyway, just experts are saying that this kind of breaches are minimal that can happen. They can see that you've used Facebook, but they cannot reach your profile. They cannot know what you did in Facebook or what you wrote. And something that also kind of we're very vulnerable in that sense already. Also kind of our internet comes from Georgia, so a third party. So it's kind of like a network that's been in place for a while, and there's no
privacy, no security, yeah.
And an Azerbaijani government-backed NGO, the Baku Initiative Group, held a conference at the U.S. Capitol promoting Baku's Western Azerbaijan narrative, which presents the territory of present-day Armenia as the historical homeland of Azerbaijanis. Participants described the displacement of Azerbaijanis from Armenia as ethnic cleansing and called on international organizations to investigate what they alleged was the destruction of Azerbaijani culture and religious heritage in Armenia. They also urged the U.S. Congress to support what they described as the right of return and the principle of self-determination. Well, separately, a cultural festival titled Heritage of Western Azerbaijan, a return to historical roots, was held close to the Armenian border. The event was organized by the Western Azerbaijan community and local authorities. Commenting on Baku's promotion of the Western Azerbaijan narrative, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said it mirrors Armenia's narrative surrounding the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. He argued that as long as the Karabakh movement remains active in Armenia, Azerbaijan will continue to advance the Western Azerbaijan narrative. Maybe we open a little bit more context here, because he's been saying for a while, saying every time we say ethnic cleansing, genocide regarding the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, regarding what happened in Artsakh, Azerbaijan is going to mirror this narrative.
So we should not say it.
That's his proposal, yes.
So we should forget about the Karabakh movement and Artsakh, and because if we talk about it, it's giving Azerbaijan fuel Is that what he's basically saying?
I don't know about remembrance, but he is saying that as the return of the Qarabağ movement back on the agenda or public
Or the right of
discourse
return?
and the right of return is going to result in this thing. I don't know about remembering if he's saying forget or remember, but following his several and continuous announcements, that's my takeaway from what the message.
The Armenian government has taken another step toward nationalizing Electric Networks of Armenia, the country's electricity distributor owned by Russian businessman Samuel Garabedian, who was heading up the Strong Armenia Alliance. Yes, the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Infrastructure has opened public consultations on a draft decision declaring 100% of the company's shares to be of overriding public interest, arguing that the utility is a strategic infrastructure whose disruption could have serious social, economic, and security consequences. Temporary ENA Administrator Romanos Petrosyan said that if the decision is adopted, an independent appraiser will determine the company's market value with compensation set at that amount plus 15% as required by law. Petrosyan said the government expects the decision to take effect in mid-July. He said the nationalization process could take another 8 to 10 months if the owners do not challenge the decision in court, but legal proceedings could significantly extend the timeline.
And Armenia's Court of Appeal has overturned the conviction of Archbishop Mikhail Ajabayan, head of the Shirak Diocese, and ordered a new trial. In October of last year, a lower court found Ajabayan guilty of publicly calling for the seizure of power and sentenced him to 2 years in prison. The Court of Appeal also lifted the Archbishop's house arrest because he was moved to house arrest several months ago. The appeals court also ruled that the case should have been heard in Shirak region rather than in Yerevan. The retrial will therefore take place in a court in Shirak. Prosecutors say they will appeal the Court of Appeals ruling to the Court of Cassation.
Rubina, you and I were having a discussion before we started recording the podcast about this last piece of news, right? Israel once again considering formal recognition of the Armenian genocide. And why is this important? Why should we talk about it? Because it's an issue that has repeatedly resurfaced during every time there's strained relations between Israel and Turkey. Israel remembers.
The Armenian genocide is Israel's Western Azerbaijan against Turkey narrative against Turkey. It's
basically
the same thing.
That's what it is. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said he will present a draft resolution at the next cabinet meeting calling for official recognition of the Armenian genocide. He described it as a moral and historical duty and said the resolution would also condemn any denial, minimization, or distortion of the genocide before being submitted to the Knesset for a vote. And, this has been, like you said, on and off for more than a decade, more than what we remember at least. And it was interesting last year, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during a podcast said, Israel has recognized the Armenian genocide and that the Knesset had passed a resolution to that effect. And we were all like, really? I mean, I don't know. But anyway, Turkey's foreign ministry, of course, condemned the remarks, accusing Netanyahu back then of exploiting historical tragedies for political purposes. And here we are again, the weaponization of everything for political purposes. And as always, articles that we published this week, I'll kick it off with Mariam Tashjan's piece. It's called Ahead of COP17, Armenia Remains a Wildlife Laundromat. And she's done a lot of research and pulling data together from the customs office to, everything that you can imagine. So it reveals that Armenia is a key transit point for endangered wildlife. So she traces the legal, commercial, institutional failures enabling this trade to persist. And it was kind of jarring, really, for me. All these, we know that Gagik Tsarukyan has a personal zoo. And
where does he buy these animals
Where
from?
does he buy the animals
well,
from?
One thing that she's pointing to is legal, and it's because, animals are considered same as
a
custom
refrigerator.
service. Yeah. Yes, the custom service, right? If you're bringing in a refrigerator or an animal, doesn't matter. So herein lies the weak chain here, so that we're not able to stop this. And next article by Ani Torean from our creative tech section is called Armenia's long-awaited high-tech strategy takes shape, because the strategy for the high-tech industry was published, the sector, and she examines the draft and looks at the shortcomings and also the good side, because she's saying at least finally they defined what high-tech is, because
it's like a catchphrase for everything.
Everything. And they also kind of put in place the priority areas and stopped saying everything that's happening in the sector is a miracle that keeps happening, and also who's responsible for...
Because Ani tries to bring everything down to earth and say, guys, let's just take a breath for a second and say, yes, it's a very good sector. It's a very promising sector, but let's look at the flaws and the bumps and all of that. So, yeah. And we launched our salt issue called Summertime because it's very warm here in Yerevan. So the issue is about what to do, where to eat, how to find joy, how to entertain your little ones, places to take them, from sevan to sourdough to where locals actually go to eat, as opposed to the fancy schmancy restaurants that we want to share with people.
Before we conclude this sign off, a little bit about the Armenian articles that we've published, content that we've published this week. We've published, Mariam Tashyan's piece about COP17 and Armenia being a corridor of transit for endangered animals in Armenian as well, because we felt it's very important that the content be available in Armenian. We also published an article by Dikran Krikorian. It's only in Armenian. We don't have the English version of this. It's Զրույց Edward Saidi, Արևելաբանություն գրքի հայերեն թարգմանության առիթով. It received quite a
lot of conversation.
Conversation. It's about the translation, Armenian translation of Edward Said's Orientalism. I can't believe we hadn't translated that book for so long.
There you go. There's a lot that we haven't, I think. Yeah.
And speaking of books, recently French author, historian Marc Bloch's book, it's Strange Defeat, has been translated to Armenian, and I did a podcast with Talim Papazian. She's a political scientist. She's a professor at Sciences Po, about kind of how Marc Bloch understood and dissected why France lost the war, and if there are any similarities and parallels with Armenia's experience, and absolutely they are, and there's a lot to learn from that.
Well, that's the kind of week it's been here in Armenia. Thank you for listening. Have a safe and peaceful weekend, and we'll be back again next week.